Hi, everybody. It's Shirdan with the Eaglesoft Field Guide, and I'm here with Becky Moser. Becky from Once Upon a Practice. How are you, Becky?
Hey, Andre, I'm fantastic.
I'm glad to see you. I love that name.
Right?
uh,
You would know.
it's a great name. So, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm hanging in there, trying to adjust to the stay-at-home circumstances. And staying in contact with my clients to make sure their spirits are lifted and that they don't fall short on everything going down.
Yeah. Well, so everybody knows. So Becky is my go-to person when it comes to pediatric practice. If you look at the name, you'll get an idea of kind of what she does. But she's my go-to person when it comes to pediatric practices. Everybody knows. Years ago, back in the Stone Age, I was a consultant back when we wrote dinosaurs. And now that I don't do consulting anymore, people who call me and say, "Hey, I need help with X, Y, or Z," I have a group of people who I call my crew, who I would refer people to. It's not a referral because I get compensated. It's not a referral because I don't know anybody different, but it's a referral because I feel confident that if I hand somebody off to this expert, they're in good hands. So Becky's that person that if somebody calls and says, "Hey, I have a pediatric practice and I'm struggling," or if I have any practice and I know that it fits into her wheelhouse, she's kind of my go-to person for it. So I'm glad she got a chance to spend some time with me today. So we're going to
Yeah,
kind of talk
definitely. Thank
about
you.
what's happening in the world today. We're in April 16th, so we're mid-April, about a month into the COVID-19 crisis. And I've been looking for a great way to, I've been looking at how the television commercials or what they're calling this, and, this hard time we're going through or whatever. So I've been trying to figure
Yes.
out a way to talk about it. But so uh, give me an idea, like right after March 17th, which is kind of the day that I pick as the day that Dentistry changed. What have you been seeing? What kind of calls have you been getting?
Sure. Until the state mandated the ADA was shutting these practices down, I was getting a lot of phone calls of clients asking, "Do I close right now? What should I do? Should I stop on my own? What if somebody were to come in? What if one of my employees picks up the coronavirus?" And so they were just they were scrambling. Everybody was scrambling on what to do to make the right decision. And they were all deciding to shut down prior to the decision being made to.
Yeah. And what
They
state
didn't
are you
want.
in?
I'm in Georgia.
Georgia. Okay, just to be clear, so everybody knows. Yeah.
Yep. I'm in Georgia. I've got some clients in New York, along the East Coast, and Arizona,
Mm.
and so they really, the thought of shutting down business is just an overwhelming thought in itself, but the thought of their employees getting sick, that weighed heavier on their hearts than stopping business and stopping production. So that's what they were telling me. Like, I don't want somebody to come in. I don't want somebody to pick it up from our office. So yeah, it was very difficult. A lot of hand holding and me offering support to them any way that I can. But yeah, a lot of difficult conversations
Yeah.
that we
So
had.
give me some an idea of, and some of the doctors who are out here who might be watching this, office managers who are working from home. I've talked to a bunch of those guys. What kind of things are you doing in order to help practices, right now that they're either closed or somebody's coming in just as an admin function? A lot of people are working remotely. What are you doing with helping some of the offices?
Yeah, so there's always time well, there's never time in the middle of the day to tighten the ship, to work on insurances, to work on your schedule. And so why we have this open time, anybody that's putting a post out there, any of the offices that I work with, I want them to reach out to me so we can get some training so they can get the questions answered that they're not, that they kind of take guesses on, if you will, during the day. So yeah, tightening up insurance, employers, insurance companies, and then going over some practice numbers with them so they understand. Those that are still kind of new as office managers, I'd say the learning curve for somebody new in a front desk, right? Anybody coming in, I would say the learning curve before they can answer questions on their own in a pediatric office comfortably is probably a year. And so, be it office managers or just front office team members, I'm just encouraging them to reach out to me so we can go over and do some training, so they can get a jump. I mean, a couple Zoom calls and they're ahead of the game by 6 months, right? And so, yeah, working on KPIs with office managers and making sure that they understand how to put together an SOP, standard operating procedure. And that's everything from, a lot of pedo docs will go to the OR where they'll have an anesthesiologist come in to the office. So I want them to put a SOP in place. So if they were out a day, the next person can pick it up right away and get to it. So SOPs are super important for pedo.
So and a lot of people don't realize that some of the nuances that a pediatric practice goes through as opposed to a GP practice. I think the majority, and I've done a bunch of polls, the majority of our offices in the Eaglesoft Field Guide at least are general practices. But, I've worked with a lot of pediatric practices in my life, and it's funny because you don't realize the volume of patients, not just volume meaning sound, but volume meaning numbers of patients who come in on a daily basis. And the speed in which treatment is done. And, you're seeing, we normally see for hygiene, say 8 patients a day in a general practice, you can almost guarantee that they're going to see 16 patients a day for every hygienist. Meaning the doctor's doing that many checks. That means the doctor is also doing restorative care. So it's a different model.
It is.
Yeah.
It is understanding, in pedo, you've got your behaviors, right? So making sure that, and some offices use block scheduling, some just kind of understand the best way to schedule. So every pediatric dentist I've ever met, they want to get their difficult patients or behaviors, big cases done in the morning when they're fresh. So the afternoon is a little bit lighter, but making sure you understand when you're scheduling a behavior or, child that has a difficult behavior, what you can and can't put next to it, because the doctor or the assistant could require 2 assistants. You can't put, sealants or just a quick extraction next to it, because that behavior is going to take every bit of the doctor's time and the assistants if they need a hand holder. So it's really important to understand the scheduling. And then even on the hygiene side, how long are we gonna have to wait before our doctor can get out and do these checks? It's best to go ahead. If we're talking an 8 a.m. start, you've got a behavior in your treatment side, let the doctor go ahead and do these checks on these 8 a.m. patients before the hygienist kind of jumps in there. So yeah, volume that's what a pedo is about. That's what I love though. I love running at that pace. That's just kind of how my mind works. So I get it. General on the other side it's another world to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's funny because some of the things that I get asked when I'm doing a setup for Eaglesoft is, you don't even think about it. Mom pays the bill, dad pays the bill, that kind of stuff, where those kind of alerts aren't necessarily going to be something you see a lot in a general practice, but you see almost every patient in a pedo practice. There's the things like behavior management issues, there's scores that we can use and, that go into the system that we can flag patients and color code them or whatever we want to do. But it's amazing to see that. But remember, most of these patients are, I'm sure everybody knows that a typical recall visit for a child in a GP practice is 30 minutes. But now we're looking at these compressed 15-minute increments, and you're seeing these slices through the schedule so quickly. So it's a different model. So, but give me an idea, like some of the things that you like, the most requested things that you get from offices. AR cleanup, is it insurance cleanup? Those kinds of things. What do you see a lot in the practice you work with?
Sure. So AR cleanup is huge. So if an IID number is transposed, it's going to hold the claim up, be it for, a $40 X-ray or, an IV sedation appointment for $2,000. And if those snowball, you're looking at, on the upside of $50,000, $60, $70, $100,000, just an outstanding claim. So it is easy to get lost in that. So I think AR and insurance, your patient AR and your insurance, those are probably the two that just kind of get left on the wayside. They're just kind of parking lot, because when you've got a patient in front of you, that's what you need to be doing. So I do suggest that if you have a busy pedo practice, if you're running 3 columns of hygiene and one and a half, scattered op, that you have somebody designated as an insurance coordinator, somebody that understands insurance, that can work the aging and certain timeframes. That is extremely important. So that's part of it. The questions that are coming in, the sheer volume, keeping up with sheer volume on that. Yeah. But I do want to mention too, the communication between the front desk and the clinical staff. When I do go into offices and I'm observing, now I don't like for offices to close when I am on site. I want to see their day-to-day operations. That's how I'm going to be able to help them, right? So I like for production to continue, and then I can observe. Sometimes I'll even, answer the phone and let the girls at the front just kind of listen to how I take the call, the flow of the call. I'm really big at being there to help them implement the changes. But I see that communication lacks between the front and the back. And just about every pedo office I've ever gone into, this is kind of, I'll give you a rundown how it goes, is the hygienist or the assistant will walk the patient and the mom up to the front for them to check out. And what is said by the hygienist will say, or the assistant, is, okay, this is, Johnny Smith, he's all set. And that's it. Like, hey, he had a great visit today. He's all set. He's good to go. Well, what does that mean? What does good to go mean? Does that mean that you scheduled the cleaning his next 6 months? Did you schedule that in the back? That means there's no treatment to be scheduled. It doesn't communicate what was done that day. And in pedo, I know this goes against everything that you say, Andre, so I kind of get a chuckle, but in pedo, I really like the route slips. I do. I think a route slip should stay with that patient, because they can go to so many different places in the clinical bay. They're going into an x-ray room. They're going, if there's a check chair, they're in the hygiene seat. So often I see that if a patient's taken into the x-ray room, let's say they have bite wings, there's so many different x-rays to take on these little ones. It's not communicated then to the hygienist, like, okay, we did bite wings, or we did, 2 PAs. And so when the patient goes up front, they're just saying they're good to go because they already walked them out in the back. But the services that they walked out from the clinical end, we have nothing to, at the front desk, we don't have anything to compare to. Right. So with a route slip, they can highlight, they can circle, but definitely, customize your route slip for your practice. But it's really important in the communication side that your clinical team and your front desk have good conversation, have good rapport. And it's also important for your parents to see that you guys can communicate well too.
Yeah. And everybody knows that I'm like Mr. Anti route sheet.
Yes.
And a lot of that is because what I teach, and even though when I have these big seminars, one of the things that I've done in seminars is teach people. And if you've ever been to a track meet, you see people who run relays work on that continuously. I mean, they won't even run. They'll just hand the baton. And actually, I don't even have it. I used to have it sitting here on my desk. I had an aluminum baton that somebody gave me who was a runner. And one of the things that is, we have to work on is The reason I don't like route sheets is because I don't think you'll ever find runners say, well, we're having a hard time passing a baton, so let's add Velcro to them. You know, what they have to do is they have to work on a better way to pass this slippery baton. And that's what you're talking about. It is a slippery baton that they're passing between front and back. And to me, I need my clinical team, and again, I'm the crew guy, so I don't say team, but my clinical crew, to be able to walk somebody up to the admin crew and to say, Becky's here. Becky had 2 bite wings. We weren't able to do the occlusal film that we were trying to take because Becky was having a hard time. We're going to bring her back to take that. Mom, you understand this is something we're going to make sure we get done in the next couple of weeks. Becky, you also had an occlusal on that back tooth on the right, just so they're clear that I'm not using dental terms. And then as I walk that patient out and I look at the walkout screen in Eaglesoft, I see those check boxes for the 2 bite wings, the occlusal that was not taken, the O on number 18, because I know it's the back tooth, et cetera, et cetera. So I make sure that that happens. And I know that that's sort of pie in the sky, but that's why I don't like route sheets, because I want to make sure that I'm training people to pass a baton and not training them how to use Velcro. Same idea.
No,
Yeah,
no, absolutely. Yeah, and it makes sense. I think where we get stuck in pedo is if we've got usually 1 check in, 1 check out, but they're checking out 3 columns of hygiene, and depending on the timing. And so just so nothing is lost, and until those team members, the crew there can really establish a foundation. I'm like, just use the resources we have, so we can be efficient and then run with it. But no, it's funny that, you say the baton, I kind of refer to that also. So, yeah.
And it's, the beauty of this is, dentistry is like an orchestra. And it's funny because what we're going through right now with Zoom, and if you watch a really good Zoom call, especially with multiple people, I mean, it's just you and I today, but if you see 100 people and you see everybody chattering at the same time, and it's the same, if you've got an orchestra that they're not in sync, the music just isn't right. And when that office is in sync, and all the music comes out and you don't hear this disruption. We both worked in offices at, those days when at the end of the day you go, wow, is it 5 o'clock? I can't believe it went so fast. Yes. That's what we need to constantly work on. And what I love offices to do is, if they have that moment, to go, what did we do to make this happen? And look back on it and say, you know what? We had this in place. We had that in place. We had enough gloves in the operatory so we didn't have to run back to the storeroom. Look at that and find out why this worked, so that we can work backwards to make the next day work, and the next day work, and the next day work. And then you have this wonderful sound that comes out of it. In what I do in rowing, there's a great line from a book from Dan Brown, not the guy who wrote the Da Vinci Code, but another Dan Brown. And it talks about the stroke. So when rowers hit the water at the same time, and everybody, doesn't matter if you're 5'2" or 6'2", and you're hitting the water at the same time and you're pulling at the same time, and you wind up having this stroke where the boat's moving forward and you don't even feel you don't feel a pull. That's when you're in the swing. That's when you're doing things the right way. And I just love that feeling when you're in an office and everything's clicking. Everything's just clicking. So
absolutely. Yeah, I love that analogy, and that's perfect. And that's what I strive to get these pedo offices to. They love their job. They love working with kids. Your clinical team. They absolutely love it. The doctors usually, pediatric dentists are a little bit different than your general. Not a little bit different. There's a reason why they like working on the kiddos and stuff. They in the front desk, they love what they do, but sometimes they leave the office, they're driving home without the radio on, and they're wiped, they're exhausted. Yeah. And they come back and they do it every single day. And I want them to jam out on the way home. I want them to be like, man, today was successful. This is why, and be able to plan that again for the next day. And how did we achieve that? I don't want them to kind of dread it on the drive home, love it when they're there in the madness. I want to break the cycle, and everybody
from every GP out there, God bless pediatric dentists, because if without you, we don't know what we would do. I mean, I was telling this in another podcast. in our practice, we actually raised all of the fees for all of our pediatric services, because when I worked in the practice, we actually had different codes for restorative pediatric work. So there used to be a code for, primary and pedio. So I would always raise our fees so that the parents would just go like, wow, it's too expensive to be here. To go, oh, I'm sorry. They'd leave.
Yeah.
I have a great pediatric dentist we can refer you to. And Dr. Smith is fantastic, and he's only a couple blocks away, and you can even park in the same spot and walk. Whatever I could do to get rid of him, it was the best. So
that's fantastic.
God bless pediatric dentists out there. We really appreciate you. So give me an idea, like, what do you think, when we get back to the real world, when we get back to the new normal, because I think it's going to be a new normal. What do you see practices focusing on? What do you think patients are going to be thinking about? I've been looking at it like a crystal ball, thinking, how can I figure out where we're going to be, let's call it September, when we have the recalls who are coming back from March.
Mm-hmm. So as a mom myself, as a professional, I am looking at the dental offices to say, these are the steps we're putting in place to protect you, right? So I want these teams to be on the same page, and I'm encouraging my clients and anybody that I speak to is to jump on Zoom with their team, be it on the cell phone, computers, so they can brainstorm together on what this looks like when we go back. If there's any state or mandated changes, the offices are going to be, scurrying to get that in place. A lot of offices, I would say it's kind of split. Some have already the glass windows, mm-hmm. right? High volume practices, I see have those just to kind of block out some of the buzz, I guess, between the reception area and the front desk. But a lot of them don't. It's very personal. It's very open. So is that something that's going to come into play? I think it's going to be extremely important that the team members reassure the parents that they're doing everything they can to protect them while they're in the office. Yeah, and I think it is an eye-opener for some of the teams that, if they do have cleaning crews that come in, let's say twice a week, and clean, and then the other few days, I don't know how, what it's like in general, but sometimes the teams will pull together and tidy up the bathrooms and vacuum and, do their part. Mm-hmm. I think it's going to make them more aware on, going the extra mile, making sure that they're doing this. And even between lunches, or, right before lunch, making sure everything's tidy and wiped down, and in pedo, well, I guess in general, when these parents are coming in pedo, we might have 3 that show up at the same time, right? So everybody's at the counter, we're right there. So it's figuring out a way to kind of distance them a little bit and have maybe more sign-in sheets if we need to, just kind of along the counter, but wiping the pens down. That's something I've always said to my teams as I'm training them. We've got to keep as sterile environment as we possibly can. So hand sanitizer up front, Lysol wipes, because everything is being touched up there. Yeah. And it's constant. It's every 30 minutes, you've got a new wave, whether the other ones are out yet. They're coming in, they're signing in, they're checking out, they're in your reception area. Like it's busy time. Yeah. So
I was thinking about new designs on dental offices and where we go forward. And yeah, I know this is extreme, but some of the things that we went through with the AIDS epidemic, HIV epidemic, we learned some really interesting lessons. I mean, at that time, you talk about the 80s, and you talk about patients who, or doctors who hadn't used gloves as a norm, back then. And a lot of older doctors who hadn't used gloves for a really long time really pushed back on that. And I think this is going to be a new normal. Yes, I think we are as safe as we can be, but I think a lot of people are, I think the biggest issue is not to be dismissive. We know that we do things in a very we have very good precautions in the dental office, but I think to dismiss a parents concerns could be dangerous. And I think that's one thing we have to be very aware of, is to not say, oh, that's not, dentistry was always good and we shouldn't have been shut down, and to be dismissive of patients. I think a lot of people have concerns, like you said, like you're a mom and you can appreciate that. I looked back at my kids are in their late 20s, but the pediatric office they went to, not dental, but pediatric medical office they went to, had a door for sick patients and a door for well patients. So the sick patients were never in the same waiting room with the well patients. And it was neat. And I never kind of thought about it until this. And I thought about, even hospitals, you have the same people who have a splinter in their finger going into the door, the same emergency room door as the people who have coronavirus,
Sure.
and you never think about, is it a communicable disease, or is it, did you get, paper cut, you're going into the same room. So not that we have the same things going on at dentistry, but like you said, we might learn some lessons. Like my grocery store has a line, they have lines of tape on the floor to show you what 6 feet apart is as you walk up to the cash register. I think that might be a great idea at the front office, to have like a semicircle around your front desk to show, please wait behind this line, and you tell the person. But if nothing else, for when you're talking finances, it's just a great way to keep somebody back, because some people just don't know what their boundaries are. They'll stand over somebody's shoulder.
Absolutely.
But I think we can learn some lessons from this and utilize it for not just coronavirus, but for other things, especially if you don't have if you only have one front desk, it's great to be able to keep people away from that while you're having a financial discussion or whatever it is. So we'll learn some things from this. So. Well, anything else? Well, a couple things I want to get from you. I want you to be able to tell everybody how they can get in touch with you. What's your website, email, phone, all that kind of stuff. Tell them how they can get in touch with you. And then tell me, well, you probably have no idea where you're going to be next.
I do not.
Yeah. So tell us how we can get in touch with you.
Sure. So it's Becky Moser. You can email me at becky@onceuponapractice.com. I am on Facebook personally, and I have my business page as well. I don't have a website. It's in the works right now. Just kind of revamping.
You changed the name of your company, right?
I did. I have you to thank. Andre, he's so creative. I'll tell you guys a quick story. So when I first opened my business, it was RLM Dental Consulting. But I realized after about a year or two in that I really wasn't hitting my target. I wasn't getting the audience that I wanted. So I had met Andre early on when I was opening up my network and meeting more people. And so I sent him a text message. And if I'm not mistaken, you were at the airport, right? And you're like, oh,
probably.
I've got some time.
That's where I always.
So I was like, I'm looking at rebranding. I'm thinking about changing my name. And so I don't know. I think it was like the second text you sent me, and you were like, "How about Once Upon a Practice, Pediatric Dental Coaching, Becky Moser?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh," just like that. And so I sat on it for a little bit. I absolutely loved it and ran with it. So yeah, and it's fitting. It's it absolutely fits. It fits the pediatric practices. It fits kind of how I feel. Like, my favorite movies are Disney movies. It's just it's what it is.
It's great. And like I said, I wish I could take credit for it. It just came to me. It may have been even written on the bottom of the cup that I was holding, or something like that. But it's perfect for you. And I'm glad that it worked out that way, because every now and then I have these brainstorms, and that was a good one. So I'm glad.
It truly was. Yeah. If I'm not, I'd have to look back at a text message, but you're like, I've got some time. I'm at the airport. What's up? And then boom, it just came. So yeah, I'm super appreciative. So I've got so I did rebrand and changed my logo, working on a website, but I really want people to understand that when you bring somebody into the office, somebody new, somebody that maybe doesn't have dentistry, and I know we pull a lot from other offices, or somebody that left an office and is coming in here because they have the experience. Sometimes hiring somebody that has the right personality, you can train the skill, right? And I'm an example of that. When I started 10 years ago, I had no idea about dentistry, but I put my head down, I listened, I learned, I read, reached out to people if I didn't have answers, and I was able to grow and eventually open my own business. So if you hire on personality and train the skill, I'm here for those offices that if they invest, a few hours of training to get that team member up to speed instead of learning by failure, right? In a busy pedo office, you don't have time to say, okay, this is how we do it. This is the step. This is, it's like, watch me, watch me, watch me. And then when they start going on their own, they make mistakes and they're called out on them. Well, nobody likes to be called out on mistakes. Some people can take it, some can't, but I don't want to start off that way. Like, let's get these amazing team members up to speed with a few Zoom calls, some training, so they have a chance. If we like them enough to hire them, then we should give them every opportunity to succeed. So that's what I do. I'm there to support them, get them up to speed, get them trained. But certainly reach out to me if anybody in the pedo world out there has any questions. Eaglesoft is my favorite software, but I do work with, I don't know, probably 6 others. So yeah, Becky at onceuponapractice.com. And my phone number is 478-832-1959.
And I'll put it down here under where we're talking, so it'll show up too. So guys, thank you for being here, and Becky, thank you for hanging out with me for a little while, and stay safe out there, and teach those kids well. I know you're home with the kids, so well, thanks for everything, and I really appreciate what you're doing.
Absolutely. Thanks, Andre.